So I'm sitting here on the front stoop of my in-laws' house, and I started seeing my husband when we were quite young. And I remember when I first came here, I came from a fibro house growing up, so quite cheap building construction, nice little Californian bungalow in the suburbs, and definitely can confirm that I thought it was quite fancy that he lived in a brick house, and that out here in southwest Sydney, growing up, that was definitely a differentiator of class. Like, how good is that? That's a new piece of road out there. That and the new homes getting built out the back, as far as symbols for progress in the suburbs go, those are two pretty nice ones. What symbolises progress in your suburb? What does moving forward in your local suburb look like? There she is in all her glory, Macquarie Field Station, the lonely place. Let's go check it out. I think part of the context of living in the suburbs that you should know if you aren't from the suburbs or the outer suburbs is that trains, especially if you are on the poorer side, are like really important to your life. And the geography of the suburban landscape, for a lot of young people or poorer people, or even just eco-friendly people who love catching the train, the suburban landscape is very much constructed and connected by the train lines. So here we are at Macquarie Field Station. I mean, there are people here. It's the middle of the day and a work day. There are people here. It's not as lonely as you might think, but as far as stations go, this one gets skipped a lot these days by express trains, which is part of what makes it lonely. There's also not much over that other side of the track. Makes it pretty lonely. As you can see, there are people here. So I wonder why someone might want to invoke the loneliness of the landscape or a place like this. One of the things I've been thinking about as I read more in this novella about Western Sydney or Southwest Sydney, and I'm trying to think about the narrative conventions and, the Englishy stuff, is a phenomenon called ellipsis. And you think of when you're writing, there's a dot, 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 when there's something missing in a quote, a dot, 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 that's an ellipsis. And that can happen in stories as well. Like when a bit of information is left out or missing, there's a gap, and so we can think with how cohesive a story is. We can think about whether we get all the information we need for things to fit together or whether the author leaves gaps. And definitely in Listurbia, there are huge gaps in terms of what's described in the culture or the landscape or the character's life for the events in it. And for me as a reader, that's leaving me lots of space to fill in the gaps. So we might talk about that a little bit in class too. I finally found a house similar to what I used to live in. This is Fibro, if you've not seen Fibro. So these were really big in Sydney, kind of old style, cheap to make, Californian bungalow style architecture, often used for workers' cottages. And so I lived in one of these. They also get used in housing estates quite a lot in some areas close to the city. Not so much out here. But anyway, you'll see sometimes now they get built over with brick or rendered with concrete to look a little bit more zhuzhy. Anyway, I lived in one like this. My mum used to keep it really nice, super nice gardens. It was always freshly painted. We had a blue roof, bars on the windows so no burglars could get in, It was a nice fibro house, but a fibro house nevertheless. This image is such a suburban trope. Like, how did it get there? What is it doing here? There's no shops around here. How? Not sure Listurbia picks up, or can pick up if you're not familiar with the landscape, is the sense of sprawl. So coming from southwest Sydney myself, driving around the suburbs typically feels like a flat experience. It's not like there are no hills, but it's not like Brisbane where it's up and down all the time and mountains off in the distance. The suburbs, streets and roads can just go for ages. And that's something that, when you think about how all those different places are connected in Listurbia, you might think about.